Hello everybody! Welcome to the first official stream on the Microsoft Flight Simulator channel. I can't believe the turnout. Hey chat, how are you? How is everybody? We are super excited to be here live with you today, and even more excited to answer some community questions. My name is Jane. I'm the community manager over here at Microsoft Flight Simulator, and I'm your host for today's stream. As you can see on the screen, we have three fantastic people. I'd like to introduce them to you. This here on the left is Jorg Newman. He is the head of Microsoft Flight Simulator. Hi Jorg, how are you?
Hi, excited.
You're excited. Cool, we are too. In the middle, we have Sebastian Vogt, CEO of Asobo Studios. Hi Seb, how are you?
Hi, I'm great.
Fantastic. And on the right, we have Martial Boussard, lead software engineer of Asobo Studio. Hey, how are you doing?
Hello, I'm fine. Very nice to be here with you.
Yes. I'm really excited to have all three of you guys here together. I know you've done a ton of press interviews together over the course of the past few weeks. You've probably answered hundreds of questions. I think even today you've had a bunch of interviews, so this is probably just another one, but this is our first time really doing it live and for the community. So this is a pretty big deal for us. There's a lot of questions we hope you can answer for us. I've gathered a lot from the forums and from Twitter and from Facebook, all types of places. So I thought it'd be fun to do this live so we can interact with everybody here in chat. I see a lot of people from Discord. Hey guys, nice to see everybody. So before we get started, I have a feeling there's a lot of alpha and beta testers in chat. So I wondered if you guys have anything you want to say to them regarding all the help that they've given us the past 6 months, year, however long they've been with us.
Thank you. I mean, I would say, we've worked on this now for about 4 years, but the last year was, in my mind anyways, the most exciting ever since we opened up the alpha and we got everybody's feedback and insight. It was just incredible. While everybody tries as hard as we can to make this the sim that everybody wants, it's so critical to get your input and your insight about planes, about aviation, about the world itself. It's been fantastic. So thank you so much. You guys.
Oh yes. Well, I don't know what we can say about that. Just what you said. It was super useful. I can tell you that every single post on the forums were read, so we can get the high quality feedbacks we get from the community, and it was really a tool for us, and also a way of getting more commitment and more passion, because the community gave us a lot of passion, so it was very well welcomed.
Awesome. It's been really cool being in there and seeing all the help that they provided us firsthand. So I'm really glad that they've been helpful with feedback and hopefully can continue, which is kind of the first question. Will alpha beta testing continue after launch? And if so, what kind of capacity will they be helping?
That's the plan. I mean, I think we've talked about this a little bit. We're on, for us, launch is the beginning of the journey. So thank you all for helping us to get here. But we are planning on working on this for a long time. We always say 10 years, but hopefully it's longer. And there will be, as you hopefully know, we track carefully what you say, what the feature requests are. We put this feature, the community snapshot up every month. And we're going to flight a lot of things. We don't have any specific announcements today, but clearly we need your help. So it's going to keep going for sure.
That's good to know. And this is probably one of the most basic questions. We see it argued in the forums, we see it in the Discord a lot. What do you guys think of the whole game versus sim debate as in regards to our product? Is this brought up a lot to you guys?
Seb, you want to take this?
Yeah, it's a very special question because it depends on what you understand by game and sim. Mm-hmm. I have a software engineer background. I've developed many games, but I've always seen a game in the past as a simulation. Every game I worked on since I was very small, since I was a kid, has always had physics and some sort of simulation. And I would say a game is always simulating something, some world. And I would say when we understand simulator, I think it's more about realism. Many games are absolutely not realistic. They're fantasy world, they're fantasy physics rules, and sometimes it's even fun because you invent some rule set which is totally crazy and you have to play with it. And a simulator, and more specifically Microsoft Flight Simulator, is based on a very realistic rule set, and so it's simulating a very realistic world. But then there's aspects like gamification and all sorts of things. Some people understand this, and absolutely not in terms of Microsoft Flight Simulator. It's been designed as a simulator. It's designed with realism, authenticity in mind, and as a first focus. And so I would say, to me, it's more in first a simulator. But I mean, sometimes it's displayed in the simulation category in video games. It's a bit fuzzy here.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I would say, like, I think there's a public debate about, simmers and gamers and all that stuff. We actually never really talked about it in those terms, at least on our side. We talked about, we're making a sim for simmers, and there's people that are already simmers, and then there's people that are newcomers to simming. And then I think the approach we've taken is to make it elegant for newcomers to come to a simulation without sacrificing realism or dumbing it down in any sort of way. And Marcial always has a great story. You want to talk about this a little bit?
I don't know what you want to talk about.
How do we bring newcomers really?
Oh, yeah, okay. So, well, to be sure that we could understand what it is exactly to be in a plane and what it is to fly. So as soon as we started this project, we've decided, like a bunch of us, to take some flight lessons and eventually to become some pilots. And well, when you're having your first lessons, it's a bit surprising because it's not that complicated. You feel very empowered because it's really easy to take off. It's ready to do some maneuvers, and you can almost land the plane. And well, it's not because flying is easy, because it's not that easy, but it's because you've got an instructor right next to you. And this instructor, it does everything that are a bit tricky, like the rudder to start with, because if you don't use the rudder, then your plane will go to outside the track, and the ATC controls and some of the instruments and the checklist, everything has been delegated to the instructor without you even knowing. So basically, we thought that was a perfect design to welcome newcomers. It's like we've got some systems, we've got some assistances on which you can delegate all the tricky parts. So once you've done that tricky part, and if you're confident enough, you can unlock that. But to start with, you will have your instructor next to you, and it will help you to start and to discover what it is to fly, what it is to have the fun, because flying, I can tell you, flying a true plane is fun, and you can discover how fun it is to fly your plane, and then you will also be able to discover that it also can be very complicated, but you can embrace every single point of view here.
Mm-hmm. So the debate continues.
Oh yes, I guess.
So on that note, how did you guys decide which initial aircraft you wanted to add to the simulator?
So one very important point was that we wanted to have the aircraft in the sim that we would actually be able to fly in real life. That's why there's Robin. It's also because it's a very common airplane in Europe, France, but also Germany. But the Robin we were able to fly. Our art director on planes has had his PPL on a Diamond DA40. And so there was a list of planes. At our air club, we also have a Cessna 172, a F-172, the Rennes edition. There's a few planes that we were able to fly, and also that we could have access at any time and very early in the process to verify things and to test and to just get a feel and verify performance. And so yeah, these we wanted to have in the sim, but then there was a whole process. Maybe Jörg can talk more about it, about the whole plane list.
Oh, it actually was. I think the creative team listened a lot. I mean, basically, they went. The first thing we ever did is we read the forums. Quite frankly, like before we really wrote a piece of software, we read the forums. So we tried to understand what people were looking for, what was working for them, what was not working for them in the existing sims, and out of that, we constructed many things. The feature list, the initial one, anyways, before we got more feedback, and similar to the plane list, we tried to have different types of planes that enable different things. We put in the icon because we wanted to land on water. There's a bunch of cups that allow you to land on pretty much any field anywhere. So just empower people to go find the fun that they are looking for. If you want to fly an airliner, we have airliners. So it's basically giving you an early spectrum of planes. We tried to be actually a little bit mindful. We knew from day one, like we knew there's obviously the community, but there's also the creator community. And we considered both of them from day one as critical. And we didn't want to go too far or like basically hurt the ecosystem of third parties, because the third party ecosystem has been awesome. If you really think about flight simulation, one of the amazing things is how dedicated the community is and how many creators there are. And I think that really made flight simming the hobby that it is now. It really kept it active. So finding the right balance between giving enough, getting people a taste of everything, but then also not doing too much, because that's not all that useful.
Mm-hmm. So speaking of planes, this is kind of a two-part question. How did Asobo Studios really embrace flying as you started working on this project?
Seb, do you want to go with
So my first flight experience was a bit like Martial. So when we, at the very early stages, while we did some tech prototypes, one important thing for us, and that's been one of our, I would say, principle at Asobo, has always been to put our shoes into the end user, or at least into what we're simulating. And so it was very important to me that we can fly planes, and that we fly planes very regularly, that we can become pilots. So my very first flight at the very beginning was to start looking what it was like, also to see if it was going to be something I would enjoy doing very often, or if it would scare the shit out of me, or if it would be too hard, or whatever. And so yeah, the very first flight was more like what is it about? And I really loved it. And I think it's because we have also an excellent instructor. As Marshall said, he took out all the mental load, and pretty much all I got to do was move a yoke around, and I said, "Oh, this is fun." and yeah, I didn't know what I would learn later, right? All the stuff that comes later. But the very first flight, I think, was excellent, and so I'm more a scientist guy, so I really love all the numbers and weather data and performance and engine. So I ask a lot of questions. But what struck me the most is how flying feels. And I think it's also to do with the fact that we're flying a very small wooden frame plane, which gets bumped around a lot in the air. And I think the very first flight I did was in the spring. It was probably a lot of updraft. It was probably in the afternoon. And I also thought it was, oh, this is very, very bumpy. And you can really feel the air. When I had the yoke, I could feel every bump. You feel it in the yoke, right? Because the plane is pushed around and the yoke moves a little bit. You can almost feel the plane in the air, and you counter a little bit. And yeah, the instructor also tells me, I like it how I was fighting, and he says, "You're fighting too much. Let it go a little bit. Let it live. It's live in the wind." And these are the kind of sensation that struck me, and I really wanted to make sure that we not only simulate numbers and physics, but also simulate emotion and what pilots actually feel when they fly an airplane.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Go for it.
Sorry. Yeah, just to tell a bit more about the program we did at Asobo, because it was just not just Seb and I. So basically, we started a program on which everybody could have a program of test lessons. It could either be to eventually become a pilot, but also like that kind of discovery sessions you can get. It's 5 hours of flight, so people could choose. And even if it's just a discovery flight, just 1 hour to see what it is to a plane, almost everybody did that kind of flight. So to really understand what it is to be in a plane and what are the feelings and what is the mood of flying. So most of the companies had the chance to enter on a plane and become, at least for a moment, some pilots.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so one of the top questions I see in the forums regarding planes is what level of accuracy should we be expecting from the flight models and the avionics? Is it going to be study level, Avcen level? Can you shed any light on that?
Guys, who picked that one?
Yeah, I mean, I can talk about some of the, so you can really split it up into categories, right? There's, when we work on an airplane, there's the performance side. So we want to make sure that the engine has the right performance at each altitude, or that the plane has the right climb speed or cruise speed. And then usually there's weight, sometimes there's temperature in there, and there's all sorts of parameters. So on the performance side, so many times there's actually data. So these have been worked and iterated a lot. So the thing is that some planes have versions. So for example, the DR400, we did actually the one which is at our air club, and the real world plane that we are flying has performance which is a little bit below the one which is on the POH. So POH, I think it's supposed to go over 200 kilometers an hour, but ours, I hardly ever get over 180. And so the thing is, we try to match POH data, but sometimes, and it happens also with a lot of the Textron pilots, sometimes we have the chance to have spend a lot of time with pilots of that aircraft, and then the pilot says, yeah, but the POH, it's a little bit above, it's a bit below. And so when we had that kind of information on top, we usually try to adapt. I think this is something where one of the next steps in our backlog is to offer the opportunity that users can actually tweak a little bit the plane, because some planes in some aircrafts are very old, some planes are very new, and so one thing my instructor told me, yeah, the DR400 has a glide ratio of 10, but it's really 9 because our plane is old, and stuff like that, which makes planes a little bit different. I think it's something we want to add, but currently we try to sort of find the average. Every plane has some sort of a box. That's something we discussed with the Icon test pilot. Every plane is a little bit different, but I have a frame where it has to be in. If it's not in, then they cannot certify it. And so our planes are within the box and have been reviewed with pilots. And the idea is to open up so that users can actually hit a little bit left and right. That's for the performance. Then I think the other thing is the feel. So some of the feel is documented, like roll speed, how fast can the plane roll. But then there's some stuff which is just, you have to set a pilot in front of the simulator and he's going to tell you, yeah, this is a little bit less. Or for example, it's happened a lot on the Bonanza where they said, yeah, the Bonanza is almost unstable naturally. So it's very different from a Cessna, which is Cessna 172, which is very stable naturally. So there's little things like that. This is not written anywhere. You have to have a pilot with you. And so this is stuff we've worked also. So I think a lot of accuracy there. And then there's all the instruments. And so for example, the small GA planes are very accurate. So they have all the instruments. They're working, they're very precise, and we have added a lot of instruments that are simulated on top of what FSX was doing. The G1000 is fairly complete. It does a lot of stuff, but it's missing some features. A lot of the features have been added lately, and we're continuing to work on these. And then the bigger it gets, the more systems there are, the more we're going to focus on the actual flight. So for example, for the airliner, we have implemented what is necessary to make a flight. Whether it's autopilot or FMS or manual. For example, the airliners don't have yet the seatbelt button because you do it during a flight, but you don't need it for a flight. And so this was just a question of priorities. So airliners, I wouldn't say are not full study level because they don't have absolutely everything that is possible in an airliner.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe to speak to this a little bit more from a different perspective, like we're not just a sim, we're also a platform. So we have to constantly evaluate, what do we spend our time on? Should we go super deep on a vertical, or should we go broad? Because we get, lots of emails, we read the forums, right? So we know what new features people want and where the water planes and where the helicopters, those things. And we want to do those things. So do we want to go super deep, like on a 320 Neo, or should we go, tackle the next big feature set that people really care about? And then I think right now we're saying, it's probably better for us to go broader, because we are the platform. Nobody else can really do that for us. And there are the third parties. There are the PMDGs of the world that are super experts. I mean, it'll take us many years to ever reach their level of quality, but they're coming to the platform. That's why it's so critical to have this interaction and the relationship with the third parties, because they've already done a bunch of stuff, which is amazing. And that allows us to do new things, new features that are just as important.
Yeah. So there's lots of questions coming in chat right now, so I thought we'd knock out a couple of them before we continue. Mostly being, do we know, is there going to be a pre-download for this?
Yes. Well. So the distribution system is a bit different to what people are used to have. So the executable you're going to get day one is just the core of the sim, and after that you will have to download all the content of the sim using a platform called PlayFab. And why we did that, it's because it's going to be a unified platform on the every single services like Steam or Microsoft. Everything will be shared here, and so people will able to cherry pick the content, and it will also host the marketplace. So the idea here is everybody will have this content manager, and they will be able to download, delete, reorganize their content, and with a unified system. That's why when you launch the game for the first time, you're going to download pretty much everything that you've bought for, depending on the version you own. Okay.
Thank you. And another big question that's being asked is there going to be a career mode and or missions coming?
Yeah, we talk about that a lot. So, I mean, we always said we made the sim for simmers. And simmers, frankly, they know what they want to do in the sandbox. That's the sim. So we specifically opted out of making a career mode, as in somebody pre-designed a particular path through aviation somehow. Like we kept it a lot more open. Like, so there are tutorials that are really there. I mean, Seb always described it as like maybe the equivalent of the first 30 hours of taking flight lessons. So you take those and you get a pretty good idea how to start flying. It's mostly for newcomers, but it's you can opt in. And then we have landing challenges and bush trips, but we didn't glue it together. And it's in many ways. So we talk about this a lot for the future because it came up, from the community for a long time now. That we want to keep it realistic. We're not going to make arcadey missions and things like that. Like if we do activities, it's based on the plane you fly, where you are in the world, maybe what time of year it is in the world. It needs to be authentic, to the actual pursuit of flying and becoming a pilot or having a real world career. How do you really do that? So there's things we'll talk about more in the future, but it's definitely something we're thinking about a lot, working on already. But it's not in the traditional way how a gamer would think of a career.
Gotcha. Okay. And are there any plans in the future for a replay functionality?
There's a plan, yes. Yes, it's something we would like to bring, definitely. So we can't tell you exactly when it's going to happen, but it's on the backlog for sure.
Awesome. And what can you tell us about liveries? Will they see some on launch day or beyond?
So on launch, you might have seen that on the trailer. You've got already a livery from Iberia, and it's also something we will bring. It's also a commercial relationship we have to get with the companies, and well, during this COVID period, they are dedicated to something else, I guess. But it's something that we brought with the time. Regarding liveries, we've got some surprises for the alpha and beta testers, and we also have surprises so liveries are coming.
Yes. So you said there's a surprise for the alpha and beta testers.
Ooh. Yes.
Very interesting.
Yes. Hey. No, but I mean, seriously, so maybe I should say this. We try to license everything. Like we really do. Like we have all the planes licensed, and like everything that you see is actually appropriate, right? But the airlines, I think, really are. We've literally contacted all airlines, like literally, and we're trying to get everybody's livery. And some of them are allowing us to do this now, and some of them I think it's going to just take a little bit. But do we want to? Absolutely.
That's really great to know. So there are a couple big questions also coming from the alpha community regarding some updates to the sims. Hoping we could go over a couple of those. Let's talk about trees. Can you go over a little bit how you're constantly updating and fixing any areas that might have some tree issues?
So I've seen a lot of the feedback in the forums. I've had the issue myself because I fly a lot in Arcachon, and in Arcachon the tree line was too high, and I sent a picture of the tree line on the airport in the sim, and the issue was that this is a special species, and the species data was correct, right? It was based on biological data. The problem is that in real world in this area they are way smaller. So what they did is basically they added the tree species, and I think the story here is that you need real world counter photographs, because from aerial photos top down it doesn't really show if the pine tree is 100 feet or 200 feet or 70 feet. And I think having feedback, more accurate feedback of locations where a tree is too high or too low, with a photo, that's really important. Then the artists, they have hundreds of tree species. They can go in and say, oh, this is this species. Oh, either they can be a bug, maybe they just got the data wrong, or it can just be that maybe the parameters of how probable it is that the tree is high or small is maybe just to adjust a little bit. Because if you look at biological data, you have the minimums and the maximums. It doesn't really tell how often you see minimums or maximums. And I know that in the sim there's no tree which has impossible heights, but some of the trees may be more on the higher end more often than they should. And this is something where we don't also want to do it the other way around. I just drove last weekend over by close to Périgueux and the Périgueux and on the highway, and there was a turn and there was a forest in front of me. The trees were gigantic. I was like, oh my god, this is a bug in nature, and it can happen. That this is C'était des chênes. What is the name of the
Oak?
It was oaks. Yeah. I mean, sometimes it can happen that trees just become super big, and it just depends on how old the forest is. And it's definitely important when you take off that the forest height is adjusted. And as much as we can. So yeah, if we have feedback, we can address it very easily.
Let's make this a call to you guys. Like I remember that right after we launched the alpha, it's one of my favorite stories. The first email I ever got from somebody who was in the alpha was from Hobart, Tasmania, which I didn't know where that was, so I looked it up. And he sent a picture from him flying in the real world and us in the sim. And he said, "Oh, you're doing a great job, da da da. However, it's too red." And we're like, "Oh, okay, cool, awesome." Then a few months later, somebody wrote us an email showing us a hole in Utah, which the hole existed, was big actually, like a real rectangular thing in the middle of Bing Maps. The Bing users had never found it, but for simmers it mattered. So and we fixed that hole within 2 days. It was gone. Same with people told us that the resolution on the North Pole was a little bit too, like in that whole polar region, was a little bit too low. And we're like, oh, got to fix that. So think about it. We are really on a journey together. Like the world is really big. For anybody to really know every place on Earth is not possible. So, but we are completely open and really like the feedback when somebody says, hey, this particular tree type, for example, we're talking about trees here, this tree type isn't right. Oh, that's cool. That's okay. That's, I think there's 60,000 tree species on Earth. When we started, we wanted to make 80. Now we're like a few hundred. We're going to keep it, right? We're going to make this better and better and better. That's the whole dream here. This is an ever evolving world, and we need your input. And it's going to be, that's the only way we're going to have really to get this right.
Yep, exactly. And regarding water, can we talk a little bit about water masking and the different types of water that you're bringing in? I know there was some confusion with how some water was masked in a trailer versus what's in the actual sim right now. Can you go over kind of water dynamics there?
Yeah. So basically, we have a system in which the water has a color and a depth. So that's the color of the liquid. And depending on the depth, basically you can see what's below, underwater or not. And the underwater photograph that we have, so it's same source data source. It's in Bing. The quality is very variable. Sometimes it's very good. Sometimes it's got holes and whatever. Or sometimes somebody painted dark blue because he decided it's ocean. So what we have is we have a worldwide map of where we can decide, yeah, here the underwater data is great, let's show it. And oh no, here let's hide it, and basically we just make the water much more deep, and so you just see the watercolor. And by default it's deep, and so we have our team here, for example, who is taking screenshots or who are making video clips. Whenever they find, so they leave it as shallow water, and whenever they find a great area, they notify the art team and they go in, hey, this island is great, let's make it shallow water, and it actually works pretty well. And so we have more and more hundreds of areas where, so unfortunately we don't have an automated system where it just goes over the planet and selects beaches and says, hey, these are shallow water. So we do it manually. We've already done hundreds, and a lot of these were actually done while we made some of the videos for the trailers or so. When we found something great, we said, hey, one specific case is actually kind of funny. It's the Arcachon Bay in the trailer of last year. It's not the same than the trailer of this than it is now in the sim, but that's because the satellite data has been updated. And last year it was low tide, and this year it's high tide. And so in the sim it's actually fully visible, but it's just that it's high tide now. And so sometimes this stuff can just update.
Yeah, so just based on the Bing data there.
There's one more thing to say here. Like we're looking into, like, so there is something called bathymetry data, which is essentially the underwater relief. It's currently not in Bing Maps because that's just not what their customers want, right? They want the above the, the visible set. But we're actually looking into this now because that would be a little bit more scalable solution. But it's one of those things we just need to balance it out against other community feedback and what people want us to work on.
Yeah. Okay. And regarding the world, are there any plans, or are we going to be having seasons or color changes to match those seasons?
It's one of the two things that came straight out of the E3 trailer. People said, need VR, people, we need VR, and we need seasons. And then, I mean, Seb actually was one who, you want to speak to the snow that you did and all that?
Yeah, so very early in the process, we prototyped seasons, and snow was, I would say, the easiest because it's just it's more a physical thing. You just land the snow on surfaces and it sticks wherever it sticks physically. But we initially we didn't think we would have time to actually add it. So initially our plan was to not do seasons at all and just keep it for later. And then there was a lot of community feedback and requests for seasons. But what we found is that actually the number one request is really snow and snowy landscapes and in front of actual seasons. So what we said is, okay, let's do a weather type of snow where you can change. I think there's no snowfall and snow depths sliders. I think that's what is in now, it makes the runway slippery and stuff like that. But it's not full season. So in the sim you can change the date and it's gonna change the daylight and it's gonna have the real-time weather. But what is missing is the actual effect of seasons. It's leaves turn brown and the grass turns brown, and then there's at our air club, if you fly in the autumn or in the spring, you're gonna get the bird season, right? Alert, and I actually almost hit ducks, right? There was hundreds of ducks. I was with the instructor and he took over, right? We did a maneuver to avoid the ducks. And it can be pretty dangerous. And the seasons is all about many different things, right? And then you maybe need a snow truck on the airport, and then you need de-icing, when they spill the de-icing liquid over the planes. There's so much more to seasons. So we said, yeah, let's do a weather type of snow. We already have the seasonal weather, and let's do the other aspects of seasons later. So this is in the backlog, and we're currently working on this.
Yeah, we have a strike team. It's called Worlds 2.0 strike team, and it's in that. Like, there's all kinds of, we're collecting all kinds of things that we would like to improve in the physical world itself. But it's really just, again, priorities that we hear, what pops from the community, and that's how we prioritize.
Yeah. Speaking of, are there plans to add in more special effects like smoke on tires and contrails and that sort of thing?
Yeah. So we are definitely working on a new effect system, and that's going to be in the first update we're going to deliver to the public. We can't tell exactly now, but we're working hardly on that.
That's awesome. And of course, one of the biggest questions we're getting right now, Can you shed any light if there's going to be some sort of a shared cockpit in the future?
Same here. So this has been very well identified as something that was needed. So I can tell you, it's also something we are working on. It has been started. And so for now, we are not, like we did for the sim before, we're not giving dates. It's going to be ready when it's good enough, but it's something we'll bring to the sim, yes.
Awesome. And another big one would be, we have mentioned that we will see helicopters added to the sim in the future. Do you have any plans on the community helping to test this, maybe from the heli-simmer community and something of that nature?
Yeah, Sergio just wrote an email this morning. So the answer is yes. Like when we say how much we appreciate it and frankly benefited from everybody's input, it's going to be the exact same here, right? Like some of us will have to take some helicopter lessons, and then we will also rely on people who fly all kinds of different helicopters because we need to get lots of input. So right. Yeah, clearly we're going to work on this together.
Right. Okay. So helicopters are coming in the future, everyone. It's all going to be okay.
And
yes,
it's complicated, so it's going to take
yes,
of course.
Patience, right?
Please give us some time.
Patience. All right. So, what will we be continuing the development roadmap, and how often can we expect patches and updates to come to the sim moving forward?
Yep, both the DR and the feedback snapshot are going to continue, and it's so when you see it on the right side of the feedback snapshot, and there's 10 things. Those are the 10 things we talk about a lot. So that it's very, very important that you keep giving us feedback. The update cadence, we talked about, we wanted to have something meaningful once a month. And so that can be, so in order to wrap our own heads around it, we sort of put into different categories. One update is going to be called World Update, where we, the real world is constantly changing. And the data that we get from, there's planes right now flying over the northern hemisphere because there's no clouds or very few clouds. So we get new satellite imagery, we get new aerial data. That gets ultimately funneled into Bing Maps. And then we do all of the processing. I don't know if you saw the Black Shark video. So we do a bunch of work to actually make the 3D world happen. That's an ongoing process. What we found, though, is that, sometimes it's very patchy. Sometimes there's like 40 square kilometers of something up better, in the middle of nowhere. Yeah. So instead, we are going to update regions. Like we're going to literally take a region of Earth where we know we have much better data now, and we're going to make that interesting in that we're going to put some POIs in. We're going to put some airports in that are handcrafted, and we're going to make some experiences to really light up that place on Earth. And then hopefully, everybody's actually going to visit that place on Earth and experience this maybe for the first time. There's a lot of simulation happens in Western Europe and in North America, but there's so many other super cool places. So we're going to go sort of around the world in a continued manner, and so that's the world updates. And then there's sim updates where the way I think about that is basically the features that are on the feedback snapshot, some things that we think, we just read it, or we watch YouTube videos all the time right now, and then there will also be some bigger updates, like almost, I wouldn't say not just a separate product, but it's big enough to actually make that, to make it. It'll take many, many months or years to actually make that. And we think of those as like PDLC. Like the other two are free. We're not going to, the sim updates are never going to charge for that stuff. But maybe if we, for example, do helicopters, maybe we'll make, I don't know, we really haven't talked about it, maybe 4 to 8 helicopters just to explore what is a helicopter, right? Just a different, there's different helicopters, right? Yeah. And that is enough. We might make that a sort of a paid thing. But there were some questions around that, and I want to answer that. That's actually what Sergio was asking. Does that mean you can't play helicopters without buying stuff? No, that's not the case. So the functionality will be in the base functionality, but we need to make samples, right, to actually develop something similar to our planes that we have in the product now, right? We needed to have some planes to make avionics work. It's going to be the same. So we're going to make a number of, if we want to talk about helicopters, we'll make a few of those, and we'll put that in a package, and then you can buy that. But you can also you can also experience helicopters without that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, maybe it's the time to speak a bit about the SDK and how it has been made, because we've seen the simulation as a platform, and exactly what George just said. In order to be able to do planes, we did tools to create planes, we did tools to create scenarios, we did tools for everything. And those tools, we are exposing those tools into the SDK. And the SDK will be available for everybody. Everybody could enable the developer mode. Great. And everybody can have an access to the tools we've made for creating the assets. I mean, it's not something that has been depreciated, or it's not something that has been dumbed down or something. It's really the tools we are using here in this very building. So the goal is to do the same for helicopters to anything else. We will have to do some proper tools so people can create their own helicopters or own gliders or own everything. So we need to do that first.
And we kind of answered this just now, but there has been a lot of questions of what we will do as far as updates and what third parties will kind of fill in as far as world gaps and things that are currently missing. So can you talk about third parties a little bit and how they're contributing?
Super important. Like, so I think maybe I said that before, like, but there's the community of simmers and there's a community of creators. Some of them overlap, obviously, but we think both of them are absolutely critical to make this work and to make the platform a thriving, vibrant ecosystem. And obviously, as you probably know, we were pretty quiet about the sim for the first few years because we had to be like, we really had to work ourselves through it. But after E3, like last year when we announced, the following weeks were spent calling third-party developers, asking them, hey, we want to work with you. What do you need in the SDK? Let's go work together and figure out what the features are. And it's been great. And it's so awesome to see what's happening now. Like just a few weeks ago, we opened up this partnership program, and I think it's now close to 700 companies that have signed up.
Wow.
It's crazy. Yeah. And then so that just the other day, and it's so awesome for us to see this, right? So just the other day, we basically said, hey, if you want to share your pictures of what you're making, go ahead. Oh my God, there's like 100 airports, dozens of airplanes. That's why we're doing this. It's a platform, right? Mm-hmm. It's great to see that people are embracing it, really.
Yeah. So let's delve into a little bit about airports. I know there was some confusion when we first announced the different editions and which airports were handcrafted. A lot of people want to know, what does handcrafted really mean? How many airports will be in the sim? Can you explain that a little bit more?
Seth, do you want to take this one?
Yeah. So I think the when we say handcrafted, we're really talking about the infrastructures more, the buildings. Every airport on the planet is in the sim. So I would say it's even more than every airport, because we have aerial data for the planet. So even if there is just a small grass strip that some farmer uses once a year to fly up and put some stuff in his fields, it's going to be there because it's in the area. And so you're going to find some grass and you can land there. It doesn't necessarily mean that it is a real airport which is registered. We have 37,000 or so airports which are actually there on the map. You can find them and you can start there and take there's going to be a runway or grass strip. These have also all been handcrafted, but only the runway, the taxiway, the parking lots, and some data, right, to make the airport functional so that you can actually go there and land and all that stuff. Maybe frequencies for radios, all that stuff is there. But the buildings are going to be based on the technology that we showed last week from Black Shark. So they basically find where the building is, they have a footprint, they look at the satellite data, they find what roof type it is, they have a classification of AI which goes in, this may be this type of hangar, or maybe this is a terminal. And then it generates a procedural building. So 37,000 airports or airfields or things have generated hangars and terminals. But the handcrafted airports, what we handcrafted, someone went in, or a team went in even, had pictures and reference material, and they made the actual terminals and each building hangars, and if there's a fuel pump which has a certain color, and they really customized it so that it looks like on the photographs and doesn't have the generic automatic buildings anymore. But you can fly to any of the 37,000. It's going to feel reasonably realistic. Building's going to be in the right spot. And in Arcachon, the hangars look okay. They're like the same color. They're maybe not exactly the same hangars, but it still works. But every runway, taxiway is all in the right spot. It's still way good enough to actually go fly there and do all the flying you want to do. It just doesn't look exactly like real world. Where the handcrafted ones, they look very, very close to photos. Yeah,
and I know the Alpha community helped a lot with some of the airports as far as telling us how we could improve. Part of the testing there. So thank you again to the community there for all the feedback you've been providing. Another big question I'm getting is, will you support freeware developers modding the default aircraft to be released on the marketplace?
Modding.
It's something we haven't quite discussed, I would say.
No.
Yeah. It's I would say in pure technology, it's not impossible, right? It's the format is the same for the SDK than what we're using, so it's not harder to customize a plane. It is a question. There's also a problem with that. So if it's a totally different plane, it's different problems than if there's like an infinite number of planes out there. Or maybe it's easier if I give an example. We don't want to, I think there's a landing challenge in Courchevel with a DR400. We don't want to have a rocket DR400 in the sim, which can just, vertical land on the runway or something like this. So I think, we haven't talked about this a lot, but I think technically it's possible, but
it might be hard.
how that can work.
It will be seen as another plane. You can get the data, you can create a plane with the tools we've got, which will be seen as another plane. The tricking part we are talking about is the one that Seb was, I think it was on these interview sessions, because we were making so much that I just can't remember. With the kind of slight differences you can get from one model to the others because of the because it's used or because it's every planes are completely reworked and there's different session of what English for that? Seb, help me. Quand il est démonté qu'il le remonte. I'm sorry.
Every time they do maintenance, they take them fully apart. Yeah. This is impressive.
Maintenance. It's the same in French.
You see your plane.
It's the same in
pieces.
French. I'm sorry.
It's kind of impressive, and they build it back together, but then the plane is a little bit different. Yeah. When you fly, you say this doesn't feel the same. Yeah.
So for the tricking part, we're going to offer the possibility to do some slight changes. So for instance, we are used to fly for GR400. They are never the same. So you can basically tweak the planes in order to get really what is the performances of yours, for instance. But apart from that, we don't have any modification systems. People could do deliveries.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the only thing I wanted to say was we took, as I said before, we took the licensing super seriously, and it has great benefits. Because we have this relationship, for example, with Boeing or Airbus or Textron, they give us the POHs. Sometimes they give us more. They give us CAD files. They also give us access to sometimes the designers of the plane, definitely to the test pilots of the plane, and I don't know if they would allow us to go modify the base sim. And so if that's the question, can we modify the planes that come in the base product? Maybe not, because of that reason. But we'll look into it. If it comes up a lot in the community, then we're going to talk about it more.
Yeah, that makes sense. So this is kind of a fun question, but what was one thing that each developer needed to learn that was the most fun for them for this new simulator?
Yep. Stopped.
I think so. I didn't catch the question. It's the meaning of it. I'm sorry.
Is there anything the developers had to learn going into this new simulator that they just had a ton of fun learning?
Everything.
Everything.
Yeah. I really liked the aerodynamics. I think it was a ton of fun. So I like that. The thing I liked the least was the, what is the name? Frontology? That's a weird science. I don't know. I didn't like it at all. I still don't understand it really well. It's some sub science of weather, where the fronts, how they work, whatever. I don't really understand that. I prefer just watching the forecasts. But the most fun to me was aerodynamics, definitely, and how the planes fly and why and why is there adverse yaw, right? Stuff like this I really like, and I like to go experiment it in the real plane. Yeah.
Cool. Thanks. And I'd love to address another alpha question, which would be, can you speak to the progress that you're making now on autopilot and the bugs and issues that they've seen going into launch?
Okay. Well, we are still working on the autopilot. We had a conversation with Sebastian no longer than yesterday about that. So it's going to be a work in progress. We're going to add layers of improvements on every single update. Seb, do you want to talk about the autopilot in particular?
Yeah. So they are fixing. There's a full team. So the autopilot team is maybe our biggest team, actually. It's because I think one of the big changes is that now the autopilot is different on every plane. And for example, the Boeing autopilot style is very different from the Airbus autopilot style. And so the 747 autopilot is totally different from the A320 autopilot. And so that team has a lot of work. And so they also had a lot of bugs. They have fixed, in between updates, they have fixed many bugs, sometimes on one plane type. What was really great during the alpha phase is that we could roll out updates to the autopilots. Sometimes, however, when one plane got fixed because the system was changed, it would break another plane. And because the autopilot is now different, it's not just one system and it's the same on every plane, which would have been so much simpler. But no, yeah, that's really the big thing. I know they fixed a lot of bugs during the last weeks. There was a few videos out, so we watch all the videos about the sim, every content creator, everything that happens. So every time I saw autopilot bug, I send it to the team, and most of the time they were already fixed. It's just that the update wasn't rolled out to the public. Sometimes also, however, it's they told me, yeah, but that's not how the autopilot works anymore. It's because it's this way in the plane, and review this with the pilot. So the thing is also because the autopilot system has changed from FS6 a lot. And because it's now dedicated to every plane, sometimes people are not used to how it works. But yeah, there were also many bugs that they have addressed, and I know there's still stuff they need to tweak. For example, there was an oscillation bug. It's not just one oscillation bug. It was a little bit different on every plane, and I know they told me they fixed it on many planes, so hopefully it's gone. Maybe it's not completely. I don't really know. Actually, it's funny enough. I once did a flight from Denver to Wichita, and I was on a small jet. It had an oscillation bug. Like the jet for 1 hour went do in real life. So I was saying to myself, yeah, this is something which is maybe a little bit harder and actually can happen in real life, and they must struggle with this too. But so yeah, this is one of the things we struggle, and yeah, they have done a ton of updates already. So I think it should be much better in the release version. But we will be we will look very much at feedback, at any issues people still see, because it is just so complex when they test it, because sometimes the bug can be depending on the route when they make a navigation where they're actually flying, because in that place there's a constraint which doesn't work, or all sorts of different kinds of stuff. And so yeah, this is definitely something where the world is huge. There's an infinite number of routes you can do. There's many different planes with different systems. They all work differently, and feedback is going to be very important. But we have a big team on it. They're fixing around 50 bugs a day. So I think it's moving fast. If we have the right feedback, it's going to move very fast.
Yeah, that's a fantastic answer. Thank you so much, Seb. We have about 5 minutes left, so I'm going to ask two more feature questions and then go over a couple of platform questions. So what's the plan for updates to weather? Like, do you plan on adding more types of clouds, like cirrus clouds? Can you speak to that a little bit?
So the intention, because on weather, there's two kind of the weather. Sorry, there's the real-time weather and there's the one you can uncraft. So the scenes comes with a tool on which you can put every single layer of clouds, and you can merge them. You can set up the winds. You can basically you can create the kind of situation that you would like to get on flying. So I don't know what kind of clouds we could bring about more than that.
Yeah, the cirrus is a...
the cirrus. I'm sorry.
The cirrus, you can almost... I mean, you can create
you can create, yes.
Yeah, if you look at cloud pictures, the problem is there's an infinite number of possible clouds. So cirrus, if you take a cloud layer, you put it very high, you make it very small and thin. And if you tweak around with the coverage and the scattering, you can get some type of cirrus, but you cannot yet get the ones when they're super stretchy, right? I think it's to very, very strong high altitude winds, and the cirrus really stretch out. We did some prototyping with this, and it's actually possible in the shader to stretch out the clouds. But this is something where, I mean, we're gonna update, and it's gonna be on basically on a to-do list. But in the weather menu, I think it's possible to add a slider where you can just stretch stuff. Because it works in the shader. It is just something which is on the list, but I mean, there's not just cirrus, right? There's we had some funny clouds in Bordeaux last year where what was the name? Mammutus? What? Some crazy name. I was like, what? And then you can see sometimes they make rolling clouds and there's
We looked into this, so it's actually, there's a whole section in that World 2.0 grouping where we looked at wave clouds and the rare clouds, like the little hats that are on top of mountains. So those are, in the real world weather, we're reliant heavily on what we get from Meteor Blue. But I think in the presets, we could look into things like that. We also talk about other things like supercells and whatnot. So there's more.
I missed that Cyrus thing. Sorry.
Yeah, that's great. That's good to know. Thank you so much. And last little feature question I have that is asked a lot in the forums as well is, will we be able to open doors on the aircraft when they're on the ground? Do you have any insight on that?
The ground, thank God.
Oh yes.
No, in the air is more important. I did canopy opening training on the DR400 three times already. You open the canopy and you get drag, and it's actually great when it's hot because you get some air.
Yeah. We talked about that. We talked about that internally too, and it has been decided not to start with. So it could be something that we could bring. It hasn't been identified as a high priority option for now.
Gotcha.
Yeah, it's like external inspections. It comes up here and there, but so far it hasn't popped in the top 10. So it's somewhere below that.
Yeah, it makes sense. Thanks for answering that, though. I think that'll go a long way. A couple minutes left, so just a couple platform questions. Do we have a release date for Xbox?
Nope.
There you go, chat. No announced release date yet. Just look out on our socials. We will announce it.
It's just work. Like you have to figure out when are we actually. It needs to be great. So it's just work. And once we know how much work it is left, then we'll know what the ship date is.
Yeah.
Yes. It's basically a rules in flight sim because when we start the features, we don't really know how far we can go, what will be the techniques we can find, and it's a lot of research and development. So most of the time when we're starting something, we don't have an end date, and we want to bring it to the level of quality, or we're pleased enough, and we can go to public then.
Yeah. Okay. And is there any difference between the Steam version and the Microsoft Store version?
No, the launcher is different.
Yep.
No.
Same content.
I was talking at the very beginning of this presentation. We were talking about the playfab system, and this system is used to unify all the versions we've got. So basically, you will have the same content. It will be the same packages. You will have the same multiplayer or services options. It will be one unified world, so you can fly with every single kind of users. There's no barriers, there's no frontier. It's the same experience.
Great. So everybody will be able to fly together no matter what platform, sounds like.
Exactly.
Perfect.
Exactly.
Well, it has been an hour, so we'll stop with the questions there. Thank you guys so much for making the time to do this, for chat. We really appreciate it. And I think this went pretty well, so I'm thinking maybe we should do this once a month, do some developer Q&A. What do you guys think?
I think that's great. Like we've been waiting for this and it's great to find that we're finally ready to do this. So let's do it once a month. Sounds great.
Perfect. So guys, feel free to follow this Twitch channel. We're going to be doing these Q&As once a month to answer top community questions. There'll probably be a place in the public forums once those are live to kind of submit questions, and that way we have a really great list going when we do these. And also watch out, next week there's going to be a ton of Twitch streams here that I'll be announcing tomorrow on our socials, so stay tuned for that. This has been a ton of fun. Do you guys have any final words, last words before we take off?
Again, thank you. And this is the beginning of the journey. Let's be on the journey together. Let's have these conversations. Please give us feedback. Forums are great. Videos are great. It all works. We pay attention a lot, and so thank you for all the investment of time and that you actually care, really.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, means a lot. All right, guys, hope you have a great rest of your weekend. Watch out, August 18th is when this drops, and we are very excited.
Yes.
Just, what is it, 5 days? Did I get my counting right? Something like that. All right, everybody. Have a great time.
Thank you very much.
Enjoy release. See you all later. Goodbye.
Bye. Thank you all.